We are live and we got a new chair. Congrats. And let's look into Mackie McCormick. Becky McCormick. He's been writing some interesting stuff. Back again, it seems like. So let's look into it. All right. Founder Not Boring Newsletter media platform focused on tech strategy, startups, and business analysis with over 243,000 subscribers. Known for his optimistic, engaging writing style, blending rigorous tech analysis with a humorous, pop culture-infused voice, often described as a mix of Ben Thompson's stratechery and Bill Simmons' sports journalism. Starting as a hobby in 2019 during David Perel's Writing of Passage course, Not Boring grew from 400 readers in March 2020 to 183,000 by 2023, generating over 3 million annually through sponsorships and deep dive reports. A Philadelphia native, Duke graduate, McCormick began his career in investment banking Merrill Lynch, later becoming VP at Breather, venture-backed startup. 2017, he wrote a memo that helped Breather shift. Later becoming VP at Breather, a venture-backed startup. 2017, he wrote a memo that helped Breather shift from negative 25 to plus 25% profit margin, sparking his interest in tech strategy. After leaving Breather in 2019, he launched Not Boring initially per my last email, and pivoted from a planned in-person social club to focus on newsletter during the 2019 pandemic. McCormick also runs Not Boring Capital, venture fund that has raised $30 million and invested in startups like Ramp, Scale AI. Ramp, Scale AI, Replit, and Warda. His investment thesis emphasizes vertical integrators and ambitious tech-driven companies. He's an advisor at A16Z Crypto, hosts the Age of Miracles podcast exploring industries like nuclear energy. His newsletter's success stems from consistent high-quality content, often 5,000 plus word essays shared organically on X, where he built a following of over 245,000. He uses tools like Claude to research and edit, enhancing his workflow without replacing his voice. He prioritizes writing over growth hacking. Believing great content drives impact. Recent post on X highlights his views on capital-intensive hardware, startups, and AI's limitations in creative writing. Back him. Unexpected phone call, cats, or old jazz record, urban ennui, urban boredom, I believe. Supernatural powers, running, secret passageway, free space, train station, historical flashback. Not boring. The world is going to keep getting better because people are going to keep making it better. Techno, industrial, deep dives. Alright, this is interesting. With Charlie Songhurst. If you pick two axes, boredom and complexity, you want highly boring and highly complex. If you pick two axes, boredom and complexity, you want highly boring and highly complex, because everything in the universe is a supply and demand curve, and you just get insufficient supply of entrepreneurs in the highly boring but highly complex space, and therefore you get elevated returns. This is very similar to what NVIDIA, Jensen Huang said, where he was like, because our problem was so hard, we could spend a lot more time on it. Not many people were solving the same problem because the problem was so hard and so long-term focused. Not many people were committed to doing the same thing, so we had less competition. And when we finally cracked it, we had a really good head start. Boredom and complexity, you want highly boring and highly complex, because everything in the universe is supply and demand curve, and you just get insufficient supply of entrepreneurs in the highly boring but highly complex space, and therefore you get elevated returns. Me to turn my deep dive into an actual printed 104-page book. Meter, the internet utility. 104-page book. How long is this? How long is this? Crazy. Vertical integration, networking, and how to win the internet. Okay. Not Boring is brought to you by 2025 presenting sponsor Ramp. I don't typically write deep dives on any company more than once other than Ramp. I've written about Ramp 4 times. There's no company I know or trust more, so I'm particularly psyched that Ramp is joining us as a 2025 presenting sponsor. From the beginning, Ramp has been on a mission to save finance teams time. In my December 2020 deep dive, I wrote, by letting Ramp handle all of the work they don't want to be doing anyway, the finance team is freed up to focus on work that adds value to the business and helps it grow. While the mission remains the same, Ramp keeps leveling up the tools it uses to achieve it. Now, Ramp isn't just a smarter corporate card, it's a fully integrated finance automation platform. It streamlines approvals, automates expense management, delivers real time insights, and seamlessly syncs with ERP systems. Your finance team gets the control and visibility they need without the busy work. With Ramp, your finance team has the best engineers and fintech working on your behalf, and every day that little card in your wallet keeps getting better and taking more of the grunt work off your plate. That's why Ramp is trusted by 30,000 companies big and small, including Shopify, Airbnb, Stripe, Anduril, CBRE, and of course, not boring. Time is money. It's time your team upgrade to Ramp. Very interesting. I've been wanting to share today's deep dive with you for a long time. Normally, when people ask me, what are you writing about? And I say the name of the company, at least half the people say something like, oh yeah, I've heard of them. They are the ones who, or that so-and-so company, right? When I mentioned Meter, 9 times out of 10, I've been met with, who's that? These are people in tech, other investors, people whose job is to known today about the companies that will be worth the most money tomorrow, blank stares. That is what I live for. Meter has the widest gap between promise and awareness of any company I've covered, and I'm pumped to be the one to get to tell you about them, because the one out of 10 who does know what Meter knows. The Meter fan club, Smallwood, Ravenous. Oh shit, 2 R's.
Hi friends, happy Thursday. I get asked, what are you writing about?
Whoa. This is a 2 hour podcast. Okay. The essay is too long to fit in an email. Click to read the whole thing online. Then print it out, get it bound, highlight it, save it, come back to it, enjoy. All right. We are here for a ride. Meter, the internet utility. At the turn of the 20th century, back when electricity was new, and before it was a utility, the New York City skyline looked like this. Back then, when a tenant of a building wanted electricity, they had to go through a long and complicated process. They would call the electric company, who would send an engineer to assess the building's location and suitability for electric installation. Assuming suitable, electrical engineers would design custom electrical plans for each building, which included the placement of wiring, fixtures, switches, and other electrical components. Then they would install wiring and appliances like light bulbs and chandeliers. Once the building was wired, engineers would run wires from the nearest utility pole to the building, hence the blocked city sky. Then the electric company could install a meter to measure electricity consumption for billing purposes and send representatives to train tenants on the safe operation of electrical systems. The utilities you don't think about at all today, like water and power, did not always have the relatively seamless interface that we are all familiar with. People access the fruits of an incredibly complex network at the turn of the faucet or the flip of a switch. Nothing ever starts out that way. When JP Morgan asked Thomas Edison to make his Italian New York City mansion the first private residence in the city to be illuminated solely by electricity, Edison's crew of workers clopped up in a horse-drawn wagon to Morgan's nearly renovated mansion at 219 Madison on the northeast corner of 36th Street. They laboriously excavated a large earthen cellar beneath the wooden stable. Their shovels rhythmically slinging dirt and rocks into a growing pile. Within the musty space of the dirt cellar, they installed a squad team engine and boiler to power 2 electric generators, all of which displaced Morgan's carriage horses to a nearby stable. The men also dug a ditch connecting the new cellar to the house, lined it with bricks, laid in the electrical wires, and bricked it over. Inside the mansion, decorator Christian Herter supervised the snaking of insulated electrical wires up through the elaborately wood-paneled and plastered walls where ordinarily the gas lines would have gone. These wires were then threaded through every space in the mansion, and new electrical fixtures were installed. In some rooms, electrical wires hung straight down every few feet from small holes in the tall ceiling, sprouting at the tips several small light bulbs. Hmm. Then a broken spud set fire to the Morgan's library. Oh shit. That was 1882, decades later, 1901. The dream of omnipresent, effortless electricity was still that, as captured by Emily Zola in Travail. The day must come, electricity will be for everyone, as the waters of the rivers and the wind of heaven. It should not merely be supplied but lavished, that men may use it at their will as the air they breathe. The build out of the electric grid that we know today was a multi billion, multi decade process that Brian Potter needed four parts of a series on the grid to cover. In addition to the grid itself, each individual home, factory, and office had to be wired to receive and utilize the electrons that the grid delivers. That takes investment, buy-in, and time, lots of time. The project continues and will continue. Infrastructure projects are endlessly expansive, but the current state of things is that when you move into a building, a home, an office, a warehouse, a store, any building really, it's already wired up for electricity. The electricity comes with the building. You just move and sign up, turn on. That is not how the internet works for companies yet. While each building has internet from one or more ISPs running into it, a working network doesn't just come with the building. Customized from scratch, new ISP contract, new network design, new hardware, new security, new software. IT teams work with a fragmented set of vendors. One company provides the internet, other designs the network, another sells the hardware, another installs, and yet another provides the software to monitor, manage, and configure the network as a company's needs inevitably change. Managed service provider, or MSP, and the system works well enough. You're probably reading this from Office Wi-Fi that's working just fine. There's some really good networking hardware out there. Cisco's Meraki is the leader in the space. Meraki generates somewhere between 5 to 10 billion and it's growing fast. Ruckus makes great access points. Palo Alto Networks makes great security hardware and software. It's worth 125 billion. Arista makes great switches. It's worth 136. That hardware can be capex intensive, sure, but as an IT leader at Dollar General told a Tegas interview, retailers often prefer capex over opex because they can amortize the cost over time. Managed service providers do a robust book of business too. The global MSP market for networking alone is something like 70 to 80 billion and is expected to grow at an 8% CAGR, much faster than the 3% growth CIOs expect. For internal IT teams, it's more fragmented but huge. It's kind of crazy, like in this age of AI, how is Becky McCormick writing these super long essays? I am really curious. Okay. Certainly, setting up and managing a network can still be a pain for IT teams. It's more expensive than it probably should be. MSP can build the kind of software to manage networks that a company could if the company also built the hardware. All of which is to say, the internet is not yet a utility, but it does work. What we do gets done in packets. That is the bet that Sunil and Anil Varanasi made a decade ago, continue to execute against today, and plan to execute against for a long time. For the better part of the last decade, they have been building Meter. Meter builds internet infrastructure. That image of the New York City skyline comes from Meter's onboarding docks. Because Meter's mission is to build the next modern utility, one in which turning on internet networking and Wi-Fi is as easy as turning on water electricity. Every building has a power meter and a water meter. We call Meter because we believe internet networking and Wi-Fi should be just as ubiquitous. First spoke with Anil on December 15, 2023. In anticipation of our call, I literally tried to read everything I had ever written. I learned that this is something he does. Within 2 minutes of meeting, he asked how I thought my writing had changed over not boring's 4 years. Then he asked if he could give me his opinion. I said, of course. I'd gotten more confident, he observed, but had lost its vitality and freshness. I'd gotten more confident, he observed, but had lost its vitality and freshness. More recently, after we had gotten to know each other, he recalled the spirit of his message. The first thing I said was, yo, what happened to you? Somehow the feedback came off as true and refreshing because I had been feeling it myself without putting it into words. He was right, damn. Then at the end of the same call, Neil said he would love for me to write about Meter. Put yourself in my shoes. Here's this person who I just met who told me that my writing wasn't as good as it used to be, then turned around and asked me to do the deepest dive on his company, the one that he and his brother Sunil had been building for a decade in near silence, and that they will probably spend most of the rest of their lives building that anyone's ever written by far. Now here we are, 13 months later. I've spent more time researching and writing on Meter than I've spent on any other deep dive. The subject deserves the treatment, and a short 22 blog post on Meter, Bree Wolfson wrote, to understand the space that Meter is operating in and the future they are building towards is to contemplate just how much surface area we are talking about. Things held in hands to things fixed in walls, humans to machines work to play, the ocean floor to in-orbit satellite city centers to remote neighborhoods, public policy to personal preferences. Whoa, this is good. This is good. Who is Bree Wolfson? Talent spotlighting CMO. Piece on VC. Positive sum. Used to stripe press Figma, and wax about company culture. You can always detect an email from someone who has worked at Stripe. I'm hitting publish on a piece I've been working on for a while. It's about the way we work and how and who our heroes are, featuring one of my personal heroes who I got to meet. I'm nervous but excited to share it with you. To understand the space that Meter is operating in and the future they are building towards is to contemplate just how much surface area we are talking about. Things held in hands to things fixed in walls, humans to machines, work to play, the ocean floor to in-orbit satellite city centers to remote neighborhoods, public policy to personal preferences. By way of agreement, this is the longest deep dive I've ever written to its 100 pages. That's a small book. After all this time and all these words, I've come away convinced that Meter has a shot at becoming one of the most viable companies in the world. Today I'm going to explain why I believe that. It is both simple and complex, like when someone asks you how you were able to magically see and speak with someone halfway across the world, you might say, oh, I just use Zoom. Or you might describe what a packet is, how it is born, the journey it takes, and all of the infrastructure that supports it along the way. There's an opportunity necessity for startups to rebuild the infrastructure on which the world runs, and understanding exactly how one of the best to do it does it in real time is valuable information. So we'll talk about what a packet is, how it zips across the globe, why it matters. We'll of course discuss Meter's products. It builds hardware, switches, security, appliances, firewalls, wireless access points, cellular access points, software, OS, firmware, connect and command and operations, from design to installation to ongoing support. We'll talk about why, despite the $500 billion to $10 trillion in networking company market cap, depending on how you define the networking company, there's a need for a vertically integrated new entrant, and why, despite all the market cap available, there aren't many new entrants, maybe one or two legitimate newcomers a decade. This isn't software. There aren't many new entrants, maybe one or two legitimate newcomers. We'll talk about the challenges and benefits of vertical integration deeply, because vertical integration is the key to Meter's present and future. We will get into the nitty-gritty details on everything from architectural decisions to go-to-market to software that's actually soft. Because a successful vertical integrator is dependent on getting thousands of details right and orchestrating them all. All of this has remained core to the Meter story since the first time I talked to Anil. Problem: want to make it easy for anyone to get internet infrastructure. Way we are doing it is fully vertically integrated. Design the hardware, write the OS, firmware, distribution, API, front end, deploy and maintain end-to-end. It's all Meter. Idea is simple, directly sell to companies. Way we sell is different. Industry is capital intensive. Don't spend any capital. Let us invest. We will charge you by square footage. We'll provide that service for you. When you move, we'll go with you, but leave hardware there for next tenant. 3 decades into internet being ubiquitous, unreal. It's not a utility. Why we are called Meter. trying to build the next modern utility. Some things have changed since we started talking to, or more accurately, have grown. First, while the importance of networking was kind of clear to me then, no one likes spotty internet. Am I right? It has become abundantly clear over the past year that networking is up there with energy as one of the main bottlenecks to the AI data center build out. In the process, better, faster networking has gone from a nice to have to strategically critical. Everyone understands the need for power. Few understand the need for networking. Second, my appreciation and understanding of vertical integrators has grown too. Certainly, thanks in part to spending so much time learning from Sunil and Anil. My entire investment thesis is that startups have the opportunity to overtake scalo- sclerotic incumbents with vertically integrated offerings that are better, cheaper, faster, and higher margin. Living masterclass in vertical integration. A working thesis that AI supports winner takes most vertical integrators in previously fragmented hardware markets. Vertical integrators in previously fragmented hardware markets. Meter is as good of a supporting example as I've found. And finally, Meter's master plan is entering its end game, even if it has decades left to go. Specifically by vertically integrating hardware, software, data pipelines, APS operations, applications. Meter has what it needs to do two things: enter the data center market, which it plans to do this year, using the same architecture it uses for local networks to reap the benefits of scale and compounding. Develop autonomous networks by building a foundation model for networking. No other company has all the ingredients and data needed to do this. Meter does. The nature of vertical integration done right is that it takes longer to get going and then it zips. Done really right, by the time the incumbents know you're coming, you have them in checkmate. To the extent that data is more valuable today, this is more true today than ever. We'll talk about all of this. This is the kind of stuff that I could and will nerd out on for thousands of words. Foundational to all of that, though, or as a necessary precondition to it, is the je ne sais quoi that's made me want to spend over a year writing this one piece. I just use Zoom off Meter is Sunil and Anil. The brother is Varanasi. They make world-class people want to do their best work for them. I'm not alone. How to define characteristic of truly exceptional founders is that they make world-class people want to do their best work for them. I had Anil in that conversation in mind. I am not alone. Nitin Shalon, who leads Meter's command product, told me that Anil was one of the main reasons he joined a networking company over the many other opportunities available to someone with a skill set PhD candidate in EECS from MIT, where he was a researcher in his computer science and artificial intelligence lab. Anil does this weird thing. He's both a killer and a joking friend at the same time. He's extremely ambitious, scarily ambitious. Getting to work with him directly every day was a big pull. I'm one little example. Nathan is one little example. At Meter, there are 100 little examples of exceptional people who join the company to work with Anil and is complementarily. And equally, Anil wants me to say more impressive brother Sunil. The Varanasis are like the forest in Silicon Valley. Forest was intentional. They are somehow involved in the most important stuff quietly and behind the scenes. Dan Romero, the forecaster co-founder, met Anil when back in 2016 or 2017. He doesn't remember exactly, although he told me to ask Anil, who remember exactly. He did. It was December 5th, 2015. He tweeted about some esoteric crypto-oriented DNS and got a random cold. He tweeted about some esoteric crypto-oriented DNS and got a random call inbound from an Anon account saying, "I'd like to meet with you." Dwarkesh Patel recently wrote about Anil asking how much it would take him to podcast and blog for recently, or asking him how much it would take him to podcast and blog for 6 months back when he was a relative unknown. He said $10,000. Anil gave it to him. Dwarkesh Patel recently wrote that Anil asking how much it would take him to podcast and blog for 6 months back when he was relative unknown. He said $10,000. Anil gave it to him. He became a really great podcast, and I told him somewhat jokingly that he regretted doing it because it meant that Dwarkesh was wasting his talents podcasting. Oh, wow. I wrote about the past and future of my podcast. I had put off applying to jobs before college ended. So when I hit graduation, I was totally unsure of what to do next. Around this time, Anil Varanasi, who was apparently one of the few hundred listeners of my show at the time, asked me how much it would cost for me to do the podcast blogging stuff full time for 6 months. I said $10,000, which in my mind was a high ball since I was living with my parents in Texas and had negligible expenses. I want to emphasize that the podcast was not on people's radar as something super promising. It wasn't even on my radar that way. I was just trying to find my next thing. About a year ago, Anil told me somewhat jokingly that one of his biggest regrets in life was giving me that this grant, since it resulted in me wasting my talents on some tiny podcast instead of pivoting away to a more ambitious project. He's changed his mind since, and I appreciate that. He's one of the few people I can count on for honest, unvarnished advice, but this candid take, even from my earliest backers, shows you how fledgling the whole project was up until very recently. I was 2 months away from quitting the podcast for 2 years. I was 2 months away from quitting the podcast. With this candid take, even from my earliest backers, shows you how fledgling the whole project was up until very recently. I was 2 months away from quitting the podcast for 2 years. Kevin Kwok quote tweeted Dwarkish and said, "There are many examples of ACV doing this. We're looking forward to working with Microsoft for the long term. The support from Jay Parikh, Satyanala, Jason, and the rest of the team has been great. Thanks, ACV. Looking forward to the partnership and how together we can advance networking for AI. We've entered into a strategic multi-year partnership with Microsoft to advance networking to be more efficient, secure, and ready. I will do a quick message to Anil. Actually, you'll message him later. Okay. There are many examples of ACB doing this under the radar, and it's one of the most loudly impactful things one can do. In general, many things Anil and his brother do that should be more widely emulated. One of the reasons Sunil and Anil are not more widely emulated is that they have flown relatively under the radar. Sure, there was the Ashley Vance piece in Bloomberg in 2022, the Alex Conrad piece in Forbes, when the company raised 35, and the Fortune piece more recently, which is the kind of targeted PR you get if you know what you're doing. And finally, after years of asking, Aarti and Sriram finally convinced their friend Anil to join them on the Aarti and Sriram show. This man is changing how to use internet. But for the most part, the brothers keep their heads down. Anil has 101,185 X followers and 0 tweets. And Sunil, as far as I can tell, has no profile. They stay out of the public spotlight, and yet everyone in the know seems to know them. Meters investors include Sequoia Capital, Sam Altman, Scott Belsky, John Bickett, Sanjit Biswas, John and Patrick Collison, Egon Durbin, Daniel Gross, Diane Green, Lashy Groom, Sam Hinkie, Reid Hoffman, Sanjay Jha, Toby Lutka, Jay Parikh, Jeff Ralston, Dan Schulman, David Solomon, Aaron Coe, which is the kind of cap table you put together if you know what you're doing. From this all-star team, two Cinderella are able to draw out the best work. At the end of my first conversation on Meter with Sam Hinkie, he told me, I'm more interested in helping you with this piece than you would know. Among my favorite pastimes is to brag on my friends and explain how extraordinary they are before even they know it. Explain how extraordinary they are before even they know it. Brie Wilson excellent in her own right. Stripe, Figma, Positive Sum, SEMO, and the author, the defining essay on taste. Defining essay on taste. Okay, we'll have to get here someday. Among other accomplishments, titled her Meter piece, Why I'm Rooting for Meter. I even found a 3-year-old Will Madness cameo when trekking through the G2 comments. Among the other 22 5-star reviews, Hero Meter changed my life. Maybe it shouldn't surprise me that Will was a Meter fan too. Unintentionally, he's recently been tweeting both the thesis of this essay. You will always win if you you will always win if you have a longer time horizon than your competition. And the reason why, despite and because of the fact that Meter is still a young company that you have never heard of, I think it's worthy of such an in-depth study. There's something very dangerous about setting out to learn from the greats once they are already great. The stories they tell about how they made it are pleasant, little archetypal fictions, revenge, love, ego, all of them fiction. Truth is only available during the journey. Okay, I'll just go and like this one. Great one. If I'm right, then setting out to learn about the Varnasis before it's obvious that they are the greats will allow us to access the truth only available during the journey. After the fact, when they are billionaires, it will be totally unsurprising that people want to do great work for them. People are inclined to want to do great work for really rich and successful people. They see it as a ticket, drawing that out of people before most even know about your company. On the other hand, that's a skill worth studying, because this ability to pull the best people from the best people to inspire them to contribute and do transcends any particular product. There's a sense you get from the Varnasis that whatever they chose to do, they would be able to pull it off. Chips, cancer, cures, fusion, whatever. But given how I have described them so far, high performance, reliable, operating quietly in the background, high performance, reliable, operating quietly in the background, getting the best out of anyone connected to them, maybe what they decided to do was inevitable. Networking is a natural fit. Meter is not, of course, the first networking company. Cisco, the 40-year-old networking giant, is worth more than $235 billion. It was at one point the largest company in the world. The top 5 companies in the networking space are valued at more than $500 billion combined. Meter is valued at less than $500 million. So Meter isn't the biggest, and it certainly isn't the first, but its ambition is to be the last networking company. If there's a packet moving in the world, we hope it will be moving through Meter hardware and software. Today, roughly 20 quintillion packets move in the world each year. That unfathomable number is only going to grow. A fundamental bet the Varnasis staked their careers on a decade ago that is now a foregone conclusion. Meter wants to move all of them. That is an odd goal but enormous and specific. Believing that it's even possible requires a deep technical understanding of how that world works today and an informed view of how it will work in a couple of decades. It speaks to the brothers' Brobdingnagian ambition and the willingness to patiently lay the groundwork on all of the small things that might compound in specifically unpredictable but aggregately inevitable ways to realize it. The story of any startup worth writing about can be entangled from the story of its founders, but the Meter Varnasi knot is tied particularly tightly. It's hard to take a Stripe bear case too seriously because there is no way the Collisons haven't thought much more deeply about the challenges it faces than anyone else in the world. There's a similar circular logic at play here. To understand Meter, we need to understand Sunil and Anil. To understand Sunil and Anil, we need to understand Meter. It will take the deepest of deep dives, a masterclass on vertical integrated strategy, the alpha in a well-constructed network, and what it takes to turn infrastructure into a utility. Of course, we'll cover Meter's products, how they fit together and compound on each other. The journey will be winding, splitting, and branching off in many directions before hopefully coming back together at the end to paint a coherent picture of one of the companies and two of the founders. I now believe will be among the most consequential of this generation. In that way, this deep dive might look like the journey of a packet himself. Zoom zoom. Consider the packet. Setting bits, the way things work now. What have you accomplished in the last 200 milliseconds? I don't mean to suggest that you're lazy in the middle of reading thousands of words on networking and business strategy. You're one of the special ones, but again, unfair comparison, consider the packet. You've been on Zoom. As you sit there, bored or self-conscious, your camera captures light through its lens and focuses on a sensor. Corrects color, reduce noise, and encodes signals into a format like YUV or RGB. This happens up to 30 times per second. When you speak up, sorry, yes, can you, okay, good. Well, I was just going to say the sound waves you emit cause your microphone's diaphragm to vibrate. These vibrations too are converted into electrical signals and an analog to digital converter, ADC. Sample the signals typically at 44.1 kilohertz or 40 kilohertz for high quality audio. The samples are ever so briefly stored in a buffer. Zoom software take this raw video and audio data and compress it using a codec like H264 VP9 for video or like Opus or AAC for audio to reduce the size of the data while maintaining quality. This compressed data is split into smaller chunks, each of which is wrapped in real-time transfer protocol headers that include sequence numbers, timestamps, so that all of the chunks can be properly reassembled on the other end. At this point, somewhere between 6 and 26 milliseconds in the process, the data first becomes a packet of sorts. Real-time transfer protocol. These packets are encapsulated in a user datagram protocol, which add another layer of information about where the data is heading and who can access it. Our new packet is one of many, over at least 100 created every second on your Zoom call, separated at birth to find their own way across the world, only to be reunited on the other end. For this architecture, we have the Soviets to thank, at least in part. Switchboard operators. Wow. Communications network used to be a circuit switch. A connection was established between 2 points and data flowed continuously from one to the other. For a while there, when you wanted to call someone, a switchboard operator would manually connect your line to the recipient's line to create a dedicated circuit for the call. This was inefficient for obvious reasons, but a bigger concern was that it was vulnerable. A nuclear war could wipe out circuits connecting military leaders, leaving them unable to communicate at the absolute worst time. Centralized, decentralized, distributed. Government task ran corporations Bob Barron with designing a network that could survive. Barron proposed a distributed network with packet switching, in which messages would be broken down into small chunks, each of which could take multiple different paths through nodes in the network to their destination. A few years later, in 1966, the Advanced Research Projects Agency set out to create a network of computers as robust and fault-tolerant as Barron's telephone network design. They built ARPANET, which went live in 1969 with 4 nodes and grew node by node, mainly university by university, over the next decade. UCL's Windsurf and ARPA's Bob Kahn published a protocol for packet network interconnection, in which they introduced the transmission control program to more reliably and efficiently break data into packets, send it across various routes, and reassemble it at its destination. The protocol was split into 2 pieces: TCP for reliable data transfer and IP for routing between different networks to form the standard TCP/IP protocol on which the modern internet is still largely based. So that is how the idea for packets was born and grew. But a packet is not quite a real packet yet. It needs its IP header. Zoom passes the UDP datagram to your computer's operating system via socket API. And our OS wraps it in another header, the IP header. The IP header gives routers the information they need to send the packet to the right destination, including but not limited to the source and destination IP addresses. The packet is born. Like a neonatal nurse, the network interface driver takes the newly born packet and swaddles it in an Ethernet frame Wow. Ethernet's cost curve. Who's the brain dead idiot asshole who came up with this? This is shit. This is trick. If you want to make the thing easy to use, just plug the thing into the goddamn telephone jack in the wall. Ethernet chip. Originally, computers with Ethernet chips were daisy chained together with a single coaxial cable used as a backbone, and each computer connected to the backbone through T connectors with BNC connections. That might be the way we did things today if it weren't for another famous borrower, Xerox POC technology. Apple was 3com's second or third customer when Krauss and the team showed Steve Jobs the daisy chain setup. He didn't love it. Who's the brain dead? Success has many fathers, as does our packet. Steve Jobs is one, partially responsible for the path it travels on his local network, not along a daisy chain path from computer to computer, but over twisted bare cabling that plugs into a switch as easily as a telephone jack into the wall. So a packet just a few milliseconds old began its journey across the network. The NIC transmits its signals as radio waves to the access point. Here we first encounter meters hardware. The access point performs a crucial transformation, receives these wireless radio signals, converts them back into digital data, and then sends that data to the switch, also provided by a meter, via Ethernet cable. Our packets might pass by the occasional curious fish, or if it's particularly unlucky, a shark device bite undersea cables, though no one's quite sure why. At last, after a journey of 200 milliseconds, an eternity in packet time, but less than the blink of a human eye, a packet arrives at its destination and makes the original local network journey in reverse, switch to access point, to radio signal, then over Wi-Fi to the computer. Today in India, a packet likely travels across Cisco hardware. One day it may be meters. This is the way the world works now, and the way Varanasi brothers bet the world will work more and more in the future, in the same way that Metcalfe and Krauss bet that an exponential curve would continue to run until they could connect all computers in local networks and in turn connected to wider networks that have connected the world. The internet is phenomenal, and there's merit to making it great. Everything is packets. We will all use the internet and packets more than we currently do. This call right now is packets. When you order an Uber, send an email, it's packets. The money in your bank is packets. Everything is just packets moving left to right. That's it. That's the world. Everything is just packets moving left to right. That's it. That's the world. Move the packets, move the world. We had very particular opinions about how to do that and about the business model. Already there are more devices on the internet than people by orders of magnitude. A lot of communication has been human to human or human to machine. The future will be machines to machine. High frequency trading for everything. Networking will only get more complex and more challenging. So I work on it. When I asked is simply that it seemed incredibly fun to work on this. PayPal co-founder Max Levchin wrote about working on Slide and selling it to Google for $228 million. Slide made apps for Facebook. It wasn't work that Levchin ended up being proud of. So he wrote this essay about how to decide what to work on. It came down, okay, this is very interesting because I think I know what he's talking about. Some lessons learned. Hard, valuable, and fun. Do you know what you're going to do after slide? The value we created. Slide was plenty hard too. As the CEO of the company, I was often putting out non-technical fires, but generally managed to keep my engineering ear to the ground most of the time. In both categories, there were many challenges, some were intellectually stimulating. The value we created was delivered to our users on a deeply emotional level, much like a hit song, a great novel, or an addictive video game. The extremely personal feedback we frequently received from our users was a great motivator. There were great many times I found myself overwhelmed by pride in our team, their intelligence, their dedication, but remaining honest. Even as a business evolved towards game making, I became more and more aware that I was not very passionate about games, despite the hard challenges and the obvious satisfaction we delivered to our users. In the universe of hard problems, I was driven to solve. Making the perfect game never occupied a central spot, ultimately undermining my perception of the value of my work. It is clear that the path forward for me is to seek the balance of hard, valuable, and fun in every project. I start, join, back, or advise. Hard, valuable, and fun. Hard is for intellectual engagement, the search for a solution by any means necessary. Valuable is the knowledge that if this, whatever this is, works, the world will never be the same. Fun is a sense of passion, the wings that carry you out of the pit of despair when nothing seems to work. The first thought upon awakening, I've got to get to the office. Oh, what happened? Oh no. Okay. It's actually hard to do what we do is heard occasionally, but often turns out to be wishful thinking rather than objective self assessment. To be entirely honest, I never fully appreciated this balance of hard, valuable, and fun, taking it all rather for granted, but because I never achieved that balance at Slide, I have significantly more appreciation for it now. Working on difficult problems is also intellectually more rewarding to an engineer, which is who I am after all. To sustain that interest, though, it's important to work on a fun, hard problem, one you're passionate about. As the CTO of PayPal, one of my key tasks were staying a step ahead of the bad guys trying to steal our customers' money or break into our servers. Stressful as that work was, I found that I missed this excitement of trench warfare terribly after I left the company. It came down to building something incredibly hard that should be valuable to the world if you solve it. And because it's so hard, and because if it's actually valuable, it will take a long time to create that value. It should be something that's personally fun for you. Let's end up naming this fun HVF. Hard, valuable, fun. Clearly networking is hard. The package journey should give. This is really cool. Like when you name your work something like this. Hard, valuable, fun. It means it aligns you. It aligns you. Clearly networking is hard. The packet journey should give you a clue about the magnitude of the challenge, as should the fact that 50 years in, it's nowhere close to be solved. It is valuable too, because when I said the system works, and it does, it doesn't work as easily or smoothly as it could or should. Internet is not yet a utility in the same way that water or power is. As everything becomes packets, ensuring the smooth flow will become increasingly valuable. We will go into this in more detail because this is Meter's mission to build the next modern utility. I think the real reason the Varnasis chose networking, though, is because it is fun. To a very small group of people that includes them, there is nothing more fun than working on the type of never-ending challenges that internet presents. If something good is happening on the internet, I should know about it. It sounds ridiculous, the internet is so vast, but actually seems to be happening. He found Dan Romero on the internet, and Darkesh Patel and countless other in fields as far-flung as biology and filmmaking and hardware economics. How it's happening is illuminating. After I talked to Dan, I texted Anil to ask if we could talk about his funnel to answer the question of how, when he's running a company and just had a kid, he even has time to splook the internet. He's made the good parts of the internet come to him. I'm spending so much essay on this particular side quest when there's so much more to write, because it's something really important I've noticed in people who seem to be particularly adept at navigating the modern world, but that I haven't yet put into words. Leverage networking. Put what you want into the world over and over for a long time. Be a person other people want to do things well for. Anil has been telling people if something good is happening on the internet, I should know about it for a long time. And over time it compounds. Now hundreds of people know. That is how I think. That part, the consistent repetition of goal, is straightforward, if not easy. If something good is happening on the internet, I should know about it. The second part, being a person other people want to do things well for, is harder. It's related to the characteristic of truly exceptional founders I mentioned earlier. Whenever someone who knows Anil sees something on the internet, their first thought is to send it to Anil. That alone could be overwhelming, no better than taking the internet's fire hose straight to your face. What makes it work is that he's cultivated a group of people with their own strong filters and somehow makes them want to do the extra bit of work to apply those filters to send him the good stuff. I'm not sure I can capture quite. This is very interesting. I'm not sure I can capture quite how he does that. It's not a tit for tat thing. It's some combination of high expectation and reciprocal curiosity, in a sense that introducing something or somebody really excellent to Anil is like a game made all the more fun because the rules are not explicit. And it's a form of alchemy, or at least sifting at scale. In either case, you end up with gold. I guess there's one thing replicable, a lot of outbound. A couple of months ago, he came across someone doing really interesting work on YouTube with just hundreds of views, and sent him a note. This happens a lot on GitHub too. Someone will write really good open source libraries and 20 people will download. Send them a note. The author of your favorite book, chances are fewer people than you would expect have even read the book, and only a small fraction of them would ever send the author a note, let alone with a thoughtful question. I'll reach out to Max Robichaud, the author of one of the best business books ever written and one particularly relevant to Meter, Cable Cowboy. And it turned out that very few people had. The whole thing compounds. These people feel appreciated and they too start sending inbounds, which sparks more outbound, and on and on. And an ongoing game of creating alpha on the internet. The end of asymmetric information, replacing the age of asymmetric information, the world of ubiquitous information. If asymmetric information is alpha, where does alpha come from in an age of ubiquitous information? The answer is another thing is to create asymmetric information for yourself through this constantly churning network of inbound and outbound. Just to learn as much as possible because it's fun. But always first is Meter, Dan, who he reached out to cold to discuss decentralized genus nearly a decade ago, has been invaluable to Meter with intros, people, ideas, and customers. Dan is how Anil met Julia, Dan's wife, and my Age of Miracles co-host. Well, it's kind of cool how this is all related now. Wow. So Dan's wife is Julia, and Becky McCormick are co-hosts on the podcast, and now Becky's writing about Anil. I almost recruited her. She's incredible operationally. I almost recruited her. She's incredible operationally, but Julia went to Starlink before doing her own thing. So it didn't happen, but through Julia, I've met open door people who are now at Meter and have been instrumental. This is one of many examples, including imagine hundreds of these, all unpredictably but surely compounding. On a long enough time horizon, we don't know what the outcome will be, but it seems plausibly brilliant if we can keep doing it for decades. Which brings us back to why Meter is so fun for Netherlands. It's the type of problem that they can work on together for decades and never run out. Whenever I interview someone for a deep dive, my last question is always if you read the final piece and it's missing X, what's the X that would make you think I missed the whole point? These are not people looking to turn their insights into dollars in their pockets soon. The interest is being acquired or getting to IPO to put money in the bank or go to another thing would really stun people if they realize how low that is. When the answer is surprising like Sam's was, it's not actually my last question because I can't help but ask follow-ups. They're driven by working together. If they were going to work alone, it would be a lot less interesting. They want to solve really hard problems, whether technical business design or empire design. They care a lot about progress and the speed of innovation. They care a lot about power law people. They want to attract those people, partner with those people, learn with them, employ them, and they want to unlock them where they can. That's the byproduct of doing other things they care about. Solving the multi-decade puzzle of building an enduring, interesting business they can run together. They would be stoked about that. They do have some progress heavy and acceleration heavy interest that they could wave a hand and say what they are doing influences that. But having their impact as founders and leaders be in a thing they build together that they run and harvest for a very long time is the thing. Surely they won't be driving things Buffett style 94, but they might come to the office and be additive if they could. They really might be interested in something that long-term-ish. I mean, the reason they chose networking, of all the things they chose, it is bottomless. They started a company to install networking equipment for businesses and had 50 employees and 100 customers by the time they graduated. That experience convinced them that what really had to be done was redesign the entire idea networking equipment and the software that runs it. So when they sold the business in 2014, to Sam's point, then bank the money or go wild like most 20-something millionaires would have done. They moved to Shenzhen, China, where they shared a single room in a hostel while searching for manufacturing partners for their routers and switches. We'd spend all day at the factory and sleep on the factory floor because we wanted to learn everything about the manufacturing process. I didn't have a bed because it was covered in circuit boards so that we could test our software. Learning, tinkering, thinking. They didn't hire Meter's first employee until 5 years and until they knew what they wanted to build and how. A decade into the journey, there's as much to learn and even more to do than there was in 2014. So when I asked Anil what makes this fun, the word he used was expansiveness. It is so cool to build hardware, design operating systems and APIs, design software, figure out how to build the network in the real world, supply chain, ops, regulation, legislation, then take the data that comes out and build models. It's everything from ISPs to wired to wireless to data centers. The expansiveness intellectually just makes it so cool to work on this day to day. There's a non-zero chance if you move the clock 50 or 100 years, people might not remember that Google was a search company, but it's possible. They remember that Alphabet subsidiary Isomorphic Labs discovered every drug in the world. It also provides the opportunity to build deeper and deeper in the stack. Take our own example, say we are successful in cellular and data centers and Wi-Fi and wired. We could go down the stack and build our own ASICs. I just don't see how we don't do it if we are successful. Just think, it's 2032 or 2030 or something and I get to go learn about building ASICs. That's amazing. That is so cool. That is the future. Okay. We'll look into ASICs one. That is the future, though. Infrastructure takes decades to build, decades made up of thousands of days filled with supply chain, APIs, software manufacturing, and the rest. If Sudan will want to earn the right to keep playing this game for decades, they need to be successful in cellular and data centers and Wi-Fi and wired first. Integrate multiple cutting-edge but proven technologies. Develop significant in-house capabilities across their stack. Modularize commoditized components while controlling overall system integration. Compete directly with incumbents. Offer integrate products that are better, faster, or cheaper. Designs, builds, and deploys all the hardware inside the space switches, access points, and security appliances. Not only does Meter develop in-house capabilities across the stack, it is turning those capabilities into software. Modularizes both the components inside the devices, like the chips and importantly the ISPs. Meter competes directly with incumbents. Offer a product that is better, faster, and cheaper. Offer products better, faster, and cheaper than what the incumbents offer or can offer without burning everything down. Customers can spend 3 to 4x as much with Meter as they would with legacy vendors. They keep more of the value and can increase margins by cutting out layers up and down the stack. Customers get more value from the network. They save time, for example, which has value than currently sits unmonetized. Continue to add products that fit into the stack. I don't think we are there yet, but after this year, we will be the best networking company in the world. Then our advantages will accumulate on top of that. There's something quite deep about the notion of using time horizons as a competitive advantage. In that, you are simply willing to wait longer than other people, and you have an organization that is thusly oriented. Makes the advantage sound a lot more passive than it actually is. The advantage doesn't come from simply waiting longer than others. It comes from making decisions and work well enough to earn the right to keep playing in the present with an eye towards their future benefits, and then fighting a brutal non-stop battle against entropy until the future comes to pass. Comes from making decisions that work well enough to earn the right to keep playing in the present with an eye towards their future benefits, and then fighting a brutal non-stop battle against entropy while until that future comes to pass. He followed his convictions of building as though the trade was going to last, and as a result, he laid strong foundations for later years. Sunan will operate on a similar principle in modern context. There's something like a matrix for thinking about what and how to build, with an orientation towards the present or the future on one axis, and whether you are building a product or a system on the other. Building a system with a long-term horizon. System, future, system. John D. Rockefeller wrote of his partner Henry Flagler in his autobiography. He followed his convictions of building as though the trade was going to last, and as a result, he laid strong foundations for later years. To build a future-oriented system like Meter, you have to make trade-offs in the present that are there are also bets on the future. And vertical integrators, I wrote that a deep tech company designs a product for optimal performance, taking on the risk of unproven science or technology to do so, while a vertical integrator designs a system for optimal performance, taking a risk on the combination of proven technologies. You might choose to do something that's suboptimal, or at least much harder today, in order to checkmate competitors tomorrow. On one of his Zoom calls, Anil drew me a graph. The data, hardware, and software Meter has built over the past decade span all of the Meter's applications. Anil compared it to Tesla and SpaceX, both of which have had to keep a bunch of different things in sync, and both of which are dramatically benefiting from accumulating advantages 2 decades in the making. How long can you have hardware, software, and data span all 5 applications? Having all three span the entire platform gives us true power. Tesla owners don't get a new car for free every time a new model comes out, and even if that they did, at least the car is a standalone thing that doesn't have to work within an existing network and doesn't have to be installed. It can just try. SpaceX makes rockets in one place and launches them in one place. Install the hardware locations all across the country. They replace the hardware with newer models when they release newer models. The more they grow, the more complex it becomes to keep the entire network in sync. How do you deal with the inherent complexity of a network like that? We have a greedy algorithm and meter that we want to go replace all the old stuff, because then we can go delete all the old code bases, we can go delete all the old APIs, all the different versions, and always singularly point to one thing. Wow. The long-term product and economics impact of having everything operating on the same plane outweighs the short-term impact of replacing hardware. It's really cool. Our incentives get aligned with the customer because we just want to build the most lasting hardware, and they tend to be the beneficiaries of that. And then that kind of gets us the circular advantage. The kind of loop is that, oh man, because of this great hardware, meter has better software, meter has a better product, and that kicks off this fortuitous loop of us, because the incentives are aligned, because we are not selling hardware to customers. We tend to overinvest in hardware way sooner than anybody else, way sooner. Playing the long game along with the right business model architecture gives you the opportunity to make bets that others might not, but it's still a bet. He has a surprising backbone, this real ruggedness about what's required. Having like 10 people building a product is better than having 100 people building a product, because the cost of managing teams is very high. So when the price drops, more adoption happens, you have more talent density, and then you can build faster. You need someone who can actually keep all the context in their head and actually make a decision. Like, we have an incredible amount of arguments. I was totally wrong with the platform, and I know when he says something, and he says it in a certain way, to take it incredibly seriously. 6-7 years ago, same thing on the Intel platform. Even yesterday, I was arguing with him about a new version of Ethernet. I called him. He was at his son's friend's birthday party, and he went to the side because I was arguing with him about Ethernet ports. You have to simultaneously not care what people think of your decision in the present while predicting how other people will think in the future. This is the magic. A lot of chips you have to choose from that are kind of similar. Then what he's saying is the real thing to select from is the architecture of the chip. Will a group of people be able to do the same thing and communicate it faster, and only then does adoption happen? When the living in Shenzhen became so obsessed with figuring out how the country's 5.5 million vending machines stayed refreshed enough to deliver hot meals that they traced the whole operation through to its source. That inspires how Meter's hardware stays fresh even as its footprint grows. But that is a story for another time, because the point of the operations or the chips aren't the operation or the chips, but the whole product they allow Meter to build. Internet on command. There's Founders Inc. Wow. Levels. Envoy. Cul-de-sac. Clara Perkins. lang chain. Simplicity should be in the delivery of the products, not the products themselves. Simplicity should not stop you from having the complexity that you and your customers demand. The power of CLI with the beauty and simplicity of a dashboard. Nitin is exceptional. Like so many of Meter's 100 or so employees. He was pursuing PhD in MIT's CCL lab, working on applying AI to life sciences. Surprising amount of people in Meter, including someone who's a geneticist or trained biology, which isn't that surprising when you think of Meter's network as a living, growing, and soon self-preparing thing, but is remarkable nonetheless. Anything is possible. They put a moon on the man. The question is how easy it is to get to a certain level of performance, reliability, and cohesion across the stack. It's a time curve. When you talk to a phone or an AP or a switch or a controller, very different things go on under the hood. It's very different engineering to be able to hit at anything. If you want to be able to talk to everything, you need to be able to talk to everything. If you want to be able to talk to everything, you need to be able to talk to everything. His point in mentioning how a few people it took to build Command wasn't to talk about his or his co-workers' talent. It just speaks to the velocity with which once the ecosystem meter is established, things can be grown and built, sprout, continue to iterate, evolve, and hit exponential curves. It's an example of the seeds of the future oriented systems approach that Nelson and the media team have been building towards for a decade beginning to bear fruit. And it's a hint that while Meter is by no means the biggest networking company today, its place atop the stack in a decade may be an inevitability. Nothing is inevitable really. Meter is min now in the networking space and it is competing with very large, established, well-capitalized players who are full of very smart people. A core piece of my investing thesis is that many incumbents in very large markets are locked into an old paradigm. Existing businesses have a techno-economic paradigm of their own, the one associated with the previous technological revolution, and they have a lot invested in the old way of doing business. The old paradigm would be sell hardware. The new one might be sell software-defined networks. These companies are not dumb though and underestimated. Sometimes old dogs learn or acquire new tricks. Cisco founded 41 years ago when George Orwell's favorite year remains. Oh, George Orwell's favorite year, 1984. The biggest player in networking. Its networking business does roughly 30 billion revenue per year. Most valuable company 235 positions the way that makes it hard to respond to Meter. It acquired Meraki 15 years ago. Meraki now represents a meaningful and growing share of revenue in local networks. Now, because of internal politics, the company is looking to consolidate and deprecate Meraki brand and move everything under Cisco. And not just the brand, but all of the hardware and all of the software. That is a crazy, painful thing. It's leading customers to look for alternatives. The upshot is that Cisco is spending the majority of its time on the integration as opposed to developing new products or systems. Fundamentally changes its business model from selling hardware to selling a network. Hardware included as a stable public company with a network of partners dependent on the current model. A newcomer adopts a new superior business model which the incumbent does not mimic due to anticipated damage to its existing business. Counterposition. If Cisco wants to compete, it will have to hurt its existing business at a time when its focus is divided anyway. It's just not a software company. It's certainly not an AI company. Mere software chops and ability to recruit top-tier technical talent will provide a growing advantage. There's $235 billion up for grabs over time. It is abundantly clear that networking is becoming more important in the data center and central to the efficient use of compute and storage, and it is also clear that the idea that networking will only be 10% or less of the budget of a distributed computing cluster is also in the past. Networking represents about 20% of the cost of a modern AI cluster. And we would not be surprised to see it go higher as low latency and bandwidth become more important. This is a good reason for HPE to contemplate an acquisition of Juniper. Oh wow, so even Mackie is doing his research on Perplexity now. Nasdaq. Okay. 49 Palo Alto and Arista. Ruckus. For the past few decades, the software has eaten the world. Entrepreneurs and incumbents alike have attempted to fix these industries with software. They have made them more efficient, perhaps, but they have only nibbled around the edges. Giving a power plant a CRM only does so much. The fact is, physical challenges require physical solutions. In other words, for networking, physical space is most vertically integrated wins. The plan is simple. First, build a vertically integrated product offering incumbents can't match and startups can, then grow it. Surprisingly, that might be the hardest part, the distribution challenge. Bill.com, Microsoft Teams versus Slack has staying power. Just because I don't like the software doesn't mean that the company is doomed to fail. Painful software plus good distribution and high switching costs is a hard combination to kill. Slack got bailed out by Salesforce in $28 billion December 2020 acquisition. The fact that Salesforce was the acquirer and currently sports and Slack the acquired is proof positive that product elegance is not a prerequisite for success. Painful software plus good distribution and high switching costs is a hard combination to kill. Can be true at the same time. Cisco will be much harder to beat than it appears. It is possible to beat Cisco with the right timing. Every customer that Meter acquires is really both a customer and real estate that Meter acquires. Old tenants become new tenants somewhere else. Compounds over time. It's pretty elegant, a customer acquisition tool that makes Meter money upfront without costing customers anything. Each customer is also a potential customer for more Meter products. As it grows the number of applications it builds on top of its hardware, software, and data. Networking is the core pillar, but there are so many adjacent things that are ginormous because business is only potentiated if you own the core pillar. The data, hardware, and software Meter has built over the past decade span all of Meter's applications: ISP, wired, wireless, cellular, and soon one more that is critical: Zuck. This will be defining year for AI 2025. Expect Meta AI will be leading assistant serving more than 1 billion people. Llama 4 will become the leading state-of-the-art model and will build an AI engine that will start contributing increasing amounts of code to the R&D efforts. Building 2 gigawatt plus data center that is so large it would cover a significant part of Manhattan. It will drive our core products and business, unlock historic innovation, and extend American technology leadership. Let's go build. Planning to invest 60 to 65 billion capex this year while also growing our AI team significantly, and we have the capital to continue investing in the years ahead. Wow. Didn't cut the demand for data centers, I don't think it did. This is going to be unprecedented, built out with unique challenges. If you talk to the folks building data centers and ask about big bottlenecks, The first thing they talk about is power, but people don't ask what's after that, and it's networking, designing, deploying, and maintaining networks. Power is a given, networking is a different beast. Taking the longest view in the room is that every once in a while, you end up in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. Like right now, Meta plans to enter data centers this year. It doesn't plan to go after AI data centers. There are a lot of normal data centers that competitors have neglected in order to pursue the AI opportunity. The secret is that Meter's hardware and software will span the entire networking stack from the enterprise to the campus to the edge of the data center. They're betting a much more they are betting a much more valuable company on a much less proven chipset. As not as risky as would have been in the past, thanks in large part to Zuck and Co. Currently doing with Meta's open source Llama model. Zuck open sources custom design data center technologies way back in 2011 in order to commoditize its complements. Scaling laws apply here as well. Capturing the local networks to data center holy grail gives me another set of compounding advantages. The algorithms and the operating system on top of that is the API on top of that is apps like Command, and hopefully in the next 6 months, Meter, the networking company. Vertical integration is the only way to do this. Elon dreams and better lessons. The Tesla bet, though, is that Waymo's approach ultimately doesn't scale and isn't generalizable to true level 5, while starting with the dream true autonomy leads Tesla down a better path of relying on nothing but AI fueled by data and fine tuning that you can only do if you already have millions of cars on the road. That is the connection to SpaceX and what happened this weekend. If you start with the dream, then understand the cost structure necessary to achieve that dream. You force yourself down the only path possible for going easy solutions that don't scale for fantastical ones that do. Train models on consistent real-time time series data. Uses models to design and configure networks from a limited and consistent user option. Deploy models at the push of a button. Manage networks autonomously. From the moment of concept to a data center that's ready for NVIDIA to have our gear there, the moment that we powered it on, had it all hooked up, and then its first training 90 days. A packet is able to complete its journey around the world no matter what's inside of it, where it's coming from, or where it's going because of these open protocols. The last networking company. Wow. That's all for today. We'll be back in your books tomorrow with a weekly dose. Thanks for reading, Packy. Wow. Please make it as easy to connect to a new printer as to connect to Zoom. A great read. I keep thinking of Apple and how it tries to have a common operating system chipset, but then you have to buy new hardware every year or so instead of they could just charge an annual fee. But probably would not work for the consumer. It works for Microsoft's Office, but not the full stack from Azure down to the application software. As the price of intelligence falls, will infuse our world with abundant intelligence streamed in packets. Quadrillions will give way to quintillions, will give way to sextillions. Meter, if it has its way, will move all of them wherever they move. The world will be blanketed networks that spring up and adapt in real time. Meter plans to be the one Blanketing has the possibilities for packets branch and compound in unpredictable ways to create unimaginable marvels. Branching and compounding meter for decades is exactly what Anil and Sunil want to do one day. Whether this decade or in 3 decades, I think Meter could be $1 trillion company, a number dwarfed only by the number of packets they move. Wow. All right, that's the stream. Thank you.